sorry, I'm going to start recording here if I can. Each animal kind of lines up with the type of people. And so we know that there's different, like, just like there's the 5 sacrifices, there's different levels within each one. So, within the ascension offering, there's 5 different types, depending which animal. There's a bull version of it, there's a goat version, there's a lamb version. So with the grain offering, you always offer wheat. You always offer wheat. It's not going to be a good picture, but wheat. You always offer the oil. And you always offer the incense. Okay? All 3. But the type of bread you offer, there's 3 different types of bread. You could do fine, what does it say? Fine flour? What are the other types it says there in chapter 2? Fine flour. The last one that's mentioned is you could just do fresh heads of grain, I believe, there at the end. Okay, so verse 5, you could offer fine flour, unleavened mixed with oil. And then in verse 14, you could offer early ripened things. So the point is there's different ways you can offer it. But not only that, there's different ways you can cook it. So you can cook it in the oven. So in verse 4, it talks about the oven. So you could cook it by an oven. All right, what's the next way you can cook it? Griddle. Griddle. Yep, verse 5. Griddle. All right, what's the next one? I think there's one more. Pan, right? You can cook it in a pan. That's the next one. All right? Cook it in a pan. All right, so why are these here? Why all these different ways you can do it? And it always has to be unleavened. Remember when Israel's going to leave Egypt, you're going to have unleavened bread for the Passover to remember that you're coming out of the land. And leaven, often in the Bible, and Jesus says this too, represents, like the leaven of the yeast of the Pharisees or the malice of Pharaoh. So you're not going to have leavened bread. And we're told in this chapter, no leaven or honey are ever going to be put on the altar. Other nations are putting honey and leaven stuff on the altar. Israel are to never do that. So there's 3 types. Why there's 3 types? Well, it probably, at least in part, it's kind of like the different animals. Okay? Only the really rich people are going to have ovens. Okay? So, if you had the money to offer like a bowl, you might have the money to have an oven. If you're kind of a commoner person, you might have a griddle. And if you're a poorer person, you either will have a pan, or you might just offer the early ripe ones, and you're not able to even really cook it. But the point is that God provides a way for everybody to be able to offer wherever they're at. Remember when Jesus says, look at that widow who offered, just a little bit, but she offered everything she had. Remember Jesus said it's not about how much, it's just, how much you're offering of what you have, and offering all of your heart and all that you have. So it's not about if you're really rich, you're better because you can offer more. It's just about people offering what they can offer with a cheerful heart, And so we see that with the animals. It's what you can afford and what you can offer. And we see this here, the oven, the griddle, or the pan. So, I mentioned to y'all before that this offering in our Bibles is called the grain offering, but it's also the word that's translated grain offering, just like burnt offering is not what it really means, the word. For burnt offering, ascension is what it means. This word, it literally means gift. In other places in the Bible where this word comes up, mincha is the word. It will be translated as gift in other places. It's also tribute. Who do you give tribute to? A king. Okay? So when Israel gives this, they're saying, I'm giving what belongs to the king. Okay? I'm giving to the king what belongs to him. So, and when we give our offering at church, we're saying Christ is our king. We're giving of ourselves to our king. So that's what this offering has to do with. And I think I mentioned before, it reminds us of the most famous offering to a king in all the Bible was what? We three kings of Orient are. Well, they don't give exactly this, but they give three gifts to a king, and it reminds us of this. They're not Israelites, so they don't have to follow this, but they're giving to the king, right? They're giving gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? So they give frankincense. They actually give one of these, but gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Throughout the Old Testament and New, we see prophecies where God says, when the nations come to worship God, they're going to come, and what are they going to do? They're going to bring in their gifts. They're going to bring their gifts to God. There's a place in Isaiah, I'm going to find it right now, where there's a prophecy where the nations are going to bring in gold and frankincense, and we know that was fulfilled with the Magi. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 6. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah. All those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall bring good news, the praises of the Lord. All right, listen to this one. Jeremiah 17:26. People shall come from the cities of Judah and the places around Jerusalem, from the land of Benjamin, from Shephelah, from the hill country, and from the Negev, bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices. That word sacrifice means peace offering. So they're going to bring burnt offerings and peace offerings. They're going to bring grain offerings and frankincense, and bring thank offerings to the house of the Lord. In Revelation 18, remember all of the things that are listed in the city? Revelation 18, there's a huge list of all these things. Let's see. I guess I'm just a broken record. I have to mention Revelation with this group. Revelation 18. Babylon is fallen. What are some of the things there? Cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat. So you have your frankincense, oil, and wheat. I'm going to find just a couple more here. Psalm 45. Psalm 45, verse 12. Listen, O daughter, give attention, incline your ear. Forget your people and your father's house. Then the king will desire your beauty, because he is your Lord. Bow down to him. The daughter of Tyre will come with a gift. That's the same word here. A gift, a tribute. The rich among the people will seek your favor. The king's daughters, all glorious within her clothing. Okay. But Psalm 45 is what? It's a coronation hymn. It's about a king of Israel being crowned. But we know ultimately Jesus is the ultimate king being crowned. And so kings from other nations are going to come and bring their gifts to this king. Psalm 72, verse 10. May the kings of Tarshish, remember Tarshish in Jonah? May the kings of Tarshish and of the coastlands, and remember, Tarshish is what? In the Bible, Tarshish basically means the ends of the earth, as far as they knew, as far away as they knew. May the kings of Tarshish and the coastlands render him tribute. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts. So that's a prophecy that the kings from the ends of the earth are going to bring tribute to the God of Israel, to the living God. So I'm just going to stop there, but there's plenty of all over the place prophecies in the Old Testament of kings coming in to bring tribute, but also to worship God, right? When the Magi come, what do? They worship Him, and then they give Him, right? In the prophecies about the nations coming in, if we get a full picture of it, what you're going to see, and you see this at the very end of Revelation with every tribe, tongue, nation, people coming to New Jerusalem. They're going to worship Him, and part of worshiping Him is giving Him gifts. Remember when I showed you the 5 different offerings? The tribute's not the first one, but it's the second, or depending on how you order it. But it's never the first. You're going to worship God. You're going to acknowledge that He's given everything for you. He's died for you in Jesus. And then you give back to Him your gifts. And like I said, I think the Magi are the perfect example of this. They're from other nations. They bow before Him, and then they give Him gifts. So I think I'm going to move on right now to the peace offering, the next offering. Last time I mentioned 2 places in the Bible, in the New Testament, where the ascension offering comes up. Ephesians, 4 or 5? And then also Revelation 4, when the Lamb comes up. And it's no coincidence, it's the Lamb coming up. Just like in Leviticus 1, Lamb is one of the animals that would go up in smoke to be where God is. And in the New Testament, we get this picture. You know, Jesus is the firstborn from the dead. We're told over and over and over. And also in Ephesians, we looked at it last time, Ephesians 4 or 5, when he ascends and he takes the captives captive. Who are the captives? They're us. We're captive by sin, death, and the devil. And He takes us up with Him when He goes up. Now what's that? If He's going up, and we'll come back, if this is confusing, I'm still wrapping my head around it. But think about, we said it last time, the animal that's offered for the burnt offering. All right, let's say this is the animal. So let's say this is our lamb. We're offering a lamb. All right, you would never offer a lamb without giving your gifts, your tribute on top. So here's the lamb. I'm coming to the priest. I'm going to do my burnt offering. So what would you do? You kill the lamb. The priest would help you cut it up. And then the priest puts it on the altar from north to south, from heaven to earth. Goes on the altar. Here's the altar. Then you give the priest your grain, your wheat. You give your priest your oil, and you give the priest your incense. And what the priest does is he takes them in remembrance, as a memorial to God. And then he takes part of it for himself. So he breaks it in two, or he divides it. And this is in memorial. This is God's memorial. And he puts some of it into his little deposit. And these are for the priests. He takes takes half of it, and then the other half puts, I don't want to wipe up the pillow, he puts on the altar. Now, what did I just do? I took bread and some other things. I broke it in two, and I said, this is a memorial, or this is for remembrance. We all know what that reminds us of, right? Holy Communion, break it in two, do this in remembrance of me. So, then the priest will take the oil, or the wheat, the oil, the incense, and put it on top of that animal. Now you burn up the animal. It all goes up all together. It's the tribute on top of the burnt offering, the incense. It goes up. So, in a sense, symbolically, the animal is carrying up these other things. The animal and all the smoke of the animal and the fire that's going to fill the animal, it's going to carry up these other gifts too. So if the animal is like the staircase, you put your hand on the animal represents you going up. The animal's going to take these gifts with it when it goes up to be where God is. So the passage we looked at last time, now I just got to go to it because I keep talking about it. In Ephesians, it gives us this picture that Jesus is going up for us. He's the Passover lamb, but not just only the Passover. He's the ascension lamb, the burnt offering lamb. He goes up for us. And as he goes up, he takes the captives captive. What does that mean? He takes us who are captive. He takes them like these. And then he's going up holding us. He is the firstborn from the dead. He's the first to rise from the dead. He's the head of the body, the church, so that those who trust in him will rise too. He's the first to rise, and all that are with him, all that he's holding in his hands, will rise later. He carries us up. He is the ladder to heaven. He carries us up to be with the Father and then into the resurrection. So what I'm talking about is Ephesians 4. So I'll just read it real quick in Ephesians 4. Therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, being diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called, and one hope for your calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. One God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. But to each one of us grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. There's the word gift again. Gift. Therefore it says, and this is a quote from Psalm 68, when he ascended on high, he led captive a host of captives, and he gave gifts to men. All right, so we'll just stop there. That passage is still, it kind of haunts me. It's mysterious. There's so much there. But I think there's something about he's the lamb that goes before us, and he gives us gifts, and he takes us with him as well. So, now we're going to move to the peace offering. Any questions on the grain offering before we move to the chapter 3?
The incense and stuff that went on top of that. I mean, where does that little altar in the second section? So it's not part of these.
Okay, that's a great question. So remember, Barbara's calling to mind think about the layout of the whole tabernacle. So here's the bronze altar. It's going to be pretty big. I mean, it's probably something like this. And it's a square. All the altars are squares. Well, the Ark of the Covenant's not square, but square. Then you go into the first veil into the tent. Now you're in the tent. Now you come to the golden altar. It's a lot smaller, and that's the altar of incense. That's what Barbara's talking about. So when you would offer this tribute, you come to the priest, you go, here you go, here's my grain, here's my oil, here's my incense. The priest is going to take a portion of each one. And so the portion of incense he takes will be for the inside. So you have a portion of the incense that is that you offer right there, the priest gets his portion from you, and he'll offer it in there. Does that make sense? And then, I'm glad you mentioned this, because with the bread, the grain, part of it's going to be burned out here. The other portion, I think, it's going to contribute to the bread that goes on the table, showbread. And the priest can eat some of that, but only the priest, and they can only eat it in the sanctuary. We find that out later in Leviticus. Now, I told you this before, but before Paul was a Christian, Saul, he was persecuting Christians, and not only was he saying, you follow Jesus, I'm going to kill you. He also noticed, and it doesn't say it in the Bible, but we can kind of infer, because if you really think about this, he would see Christians eating bread that was offered to God, and he'd see them eating it in their home. Remember in Acts, they were giving some of the apostles' teaching and eating together, and his Lord's Supper and all that. But in the Old Testament, the only time you would eat bread offered to God were priests who would do that in the holy place. That's it. Period. You have to be in the holy place. You have to be a priest. That's the only way you can eat bread offered to God. But then they went, wait a second, there's all these Christians doing this Last Supper, Lord's Supper thing. Wait a second. That means all the Christians who are eating that are claiming to be priests. And when Paul would ask someone that, we better believe the person would go, this was such a 1 Peter, right? Priesthood of all believers. Saying, yeah. And then imagine if Paul said, well, okay, if you're all priests, but you can't eat this unless you're in the temple. And then, Peter would respond, we are in the temple. Well, how? Because we're in Christ. Christ is in the temple. You see. So that's an important thing about the bread. But I mentioned last time, the tabernacle is God's house. Just like we say, this is God's house. And it's laid out just like someone's house would be in those days. So the kitchen's outside, that's the grill. Your sink is out there, that's the water and the laver. You come in, and now you have your kind of living room with your candles and your table, the showbread and incense. And then you have kind of, this is an analogy, of course, it's an analogy, but then you kind of have your bedroom, the most private room, and that's where God's, the Holy of Holies is. But when you offer grain, oil, and incense, you're offering the three principal things that are required to keep that living room, that holy place, going. Because you need oil for the candles, you need incense for the altar of incense, you need bread for the table of showbread. So you're offering the things that keep the house going. Because priests are palace servants. They're butlers for God, for God's house. Only the butlers have a key to your house, right? And they're going to take care of it, but they don't own it. That's what the priests are. So you offer those things because they're going to use it to take care of the house. Some people suggest that, some scholars suggest that when you would offer that grain, the oil, and the incense, when it's burned going up, it's almost like a tabernacle going up in smoke. In a sense. Why? Because the tabernacle is essentially a structure built around, well, the holy place at least, around candle, incense, table, showbread. So you have those three elements right there going up. So it's kind of like, because if you're a normal worshiper, you would never, ever in your life be able to go and see what's in there. If you did, you'd be killed. You'd never be able to go in there. So it's your opportunity to see those things being offered. Because the priests get to go in that tent, and they get to offer those things on a holier altar in a holier place which is closer to God. So it's your opportunity to do a smaller version, farther away from God's presence, what those people in there are able to do. And you're able to see a little bit of what you would never be able to see, that they can see in there. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, it's a lot going on here. We're not used to thinking this way. Has anyone ever heard anyone preach on Leviticus before? Am I that crazy? I heard you mention that. I am that crazy. Yeah.
I've heard a preacher go through and explain how the tabernacle played out. And I told you, mostly related it to the three levels of heaven.
Yes. Yeah. It's exactly. And when you look at the Garden of Eden story, there's 3 levels. The Mount Sinai, there's 3 levels. The Israelites, if you weren't a priest, you couldn't go up. You couldn't even touch the mountain. The animal touched it, it's killed. But some, the 70 and Joshua, they go part way up. Only Moses go all the way up. Same thing. Only the high priests go all the way up. So you have all those levels. You see it all over, in the Bible. It's amazing. So we have just a little bit more time. We're going to go to the peace offering. Peace offering. Peace offering. Remember the Hebrew word for peace? You know it. Shalom. So this offering is called the shalom offering. So it's like almost the same word as shalom. It's a different version of the same word. Peace offering. Shalom. And you see that in your handout. Peace offering. Ascension offering. There's 5 different types. Remember, because you have the bull version, the lamb version, the goat version, the turtle dove version, the pigeon version. The tribute offering, there's at least 3 different versions. You could do the fine flour. Actually, there's more than that. Because you could do fine flour, or you could do the early ripe ones. You could also do pan, griddle, oven. Not only that, some of us have talked about the bronze altar. The bronze altar would have, inside of it, it has 3 levels. There's the top, and then there's the horns of the altar too. But you'd have the high level, like of when you would cook things. You have the middle level and you have the lowest. And so the lower you go, the more intense of a cooking it is. So just like you could when you bring your grain, is it pan, griddle, or oven? Also, when you're offering it here. Some, I think, have said that you could be offering it at different levels of depth, depending on how deeply you want to cook it. And I don't know what that means. It just means there's different ways, and I'm sure there was a reason of certain occasions, and I don't know. But there's different levels. We're going to actually see these different levels a little bit later. But the peace offering, all that to say, you know what? There's 3 types of peace offering. Are you surprised? You see, so there's 5 offerings. But within those, there's a bunch of subtypes. So if you want to get into all the subtypes, I don't know, there's probably 40 or so types, little types of all the offerings, okay? You got the peace offering. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago when I preached on peace offering. There's 3 types. Does anyone remember any of the types? 3 types. We have and these types are mentioned in chapter 7, actually. So you're not even going to see it in chapter 4. So if you go to the very, very end of chapter 7. All right. Chapter 7, verse 13. With the sacrifice of his peace offerings for thanksgiving. So that's one type, thanksgiving. He shall present his offering with cakes of leavened bread. Then I'm going to go to verse... Oh, did I already miss it? Verse 16. Verse 16. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a votive or a free will offering, it shall be eaten on that day. He offers a sacrifice. Okay, so those are the 3 types. And you're going to see those types throughout the Bible all over the place. When have you ever read a psalm where it says, give a sacrifice of thanksgiving? Or you read, there's psalms that talk about a free will offering. Those are peace offerings. They're types of peace offerings. So there's the thanksgiving. There's the votive. And there's the free will. So when I preached on this, you'll remember, when I say this, you'll probably remember, I try to use some modern analogies for each one of these. So the free will, Sue, I think I talked to you, didn't I? I said, if it's Sue's birthday, remember that? So this would be kind of like a birthday party. Well, what I mean by, not a birthday party itself. It'd be like if you wanted to offer God a special praise for your particular family. It's not for everybody. It's not for the whole city. It's not for the whole nation. It's just you and the people around you. So that's the free will offering. So if you wanted to have a special time of prayer and worship in your house for your birthday, that would kind of be like a free will offering. It's free will. Do it anytime you want, but it really only concerns you and whoever you want to bring. Your family, your friends. It's for you and whoever's with you. The votive offering, votive is a word that we don't use that much, but it means vow. Votive is the adjective for vow. It's a vow offering. The most obvious for us would be if you're getting married, right? When you get married, you have a worship service, right? A lot of people my age don't get this, and it's a big problem. They think getting married is something that doesn't really have to do with God. It's like, what are you doing? It has everything to do with God. And so, not only when we get married, we do it before God, but we do it in a worship service too. We're worshiping Him, and then making those vows is within the worship service. Same thing here. That's what the votive offering is. In the Bible, the vows would be probably not marriage. It could have been, maybe. But it would have been things like the Nazirite vow. Remember, John the Baptist was a Nazirite. Samson was a Nazirite. So that would be one of the most obvious ones. That would be one of the most obvious ones. Nazirite vow, if you remember, you couldn't drink wine, you couldn't cut your hair, you couldn't be near the dead. And it's John the Baptist and Samson are the two most famous with that. So if you're going to make a vow, you're going to have a votive offering. It's giving God thanks, and it's also kind of a promise to God. Hey, just like when you get married, you're worshiping God, and so I'm making this vow before you. I'm promising to you, God, and to everyone here. So that's the votive. Thanksgiving offering. The example I use is, and again, this is just it's an analogy. It's kind of like July 4th. Because that's a national holiday. We all recognize and we celebrate that we have been blessed in a particular way, and we celebrate it all together. On July 4th, we all say, hey, we're not under the crown of England anymore, and so we all give thanks. So Thanksgiving is a national worship service. Okay? For all of Israel. Well, that's one way to put it. Another way would be it's recognizing something that God's done for everybody, right? So a birthday party or something, you're just saying, God, I'm giving you thanks for what you've done in my life. But Thanksgiving is what you've done for the whole nation or for everybody, okay? So the most Thanksgiving offering becomes associated with what God has done in the Passover. Getting them out of Egypt. God, you rescued us out of Egypt. We're going to give you thanks for that. All right? So Passover. But guess what? In the New Testament, we Christians, we're giving thanks all over the place too. Not only because we are a part of the same people of God, we're giving thanks for coming out of Egypt, but you know what we're giving thanks for too? That God took us out of sin, death, and the devil through Jesus. Jesus rescued us. He won the victory for us. So we're going to give thanks. How many times does Paul talk about giving thanks? Give thanks. Rejoice always. Pray without ceasing. In all things give thanks. Think about, he's a Pharisee. He's a Pharisee. He's trained in the Bible better than anyone will ever meet. Probably true, right? We probably won't meet anyone who'll know the Bible better than him. When he's saying thanks, give thanks in all situations, you think that he had this in mind too? Of course he did. How many Thanksgiving offerings would he have seen in his life? A ton, all over the place. So those are the three types. In the Thanksgiving offering, it's very similar to the